Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast. Welcome to the Expert Network Team podcast. I'm Carl Frank with ANI Wealth Management, and with me today is Nathan Merrill with Goodspeed Merrill. How are you, Nate?
I'm doing terrific.
You look great, my friend. You look like you are already imbibing the fountain of youth, which is our subject today, part 2. Our guest is Dr. Ricardo Rosello. Ricky, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Ben, for inviting me, and excited to be here with you again.
You look great. I wish I could do something with my hair even remotely close to what you've done. Is that part of the program? Can I come there and grow my hair back?
We're trying. We're looking into it. There's a lot of creative combing over here. Don't get
a lot of creative combing. I like it. Okay, very good. Well, actually, I'm loving not having it. I haven't had it for a long time, and I remember the days when I did have to worry about that. And now it's a whole lot easier. My life is more simple. Well, today's conversation is just going to continue our last podcast. But Dr. Ricardo, you are the Chief Vision Officer for the Regenerative Medical Institute. Did I say that right? Is that the name?
Yes, that's correct. The Regenerative Medicine Institute. We've been open for a couple of years now down in Costa Rica. Our founders worked for 7 years to get the permits. We are the only permitted entity to do this, and the reason being we chose Costa Rica was that it has a robust regulatory framework, but it is not as it is not as limiting as what happens in the FDA in the United States. So there is a high standard of excellence of patient care and results, but we're able to do some of these procedures and improve the quality of life of many of our patients.
Is this something that still suffers from some of the apprehension or misunderstanding, misprision around stem cells, that you couldn't do it, say, anywhere in America, or I'm just making something up there, but what's the, maybe a little more there would help people get more comfortable?
Absolutely. Some of these things might change now. Certainly, Secretary Kennedy has spoken about diving in deep into some of these things, whether it's exosomes, peptides, and even stem cells. And it's not the root of evil. At least I don't believe. I just think it's the way that the FDA was designed. And here's perhaps a short story to illustrate. When the FDA was designed, for the most part, you're able to take drugs, whatever drugs you're making, take a Tylenol, and you're able to reproduce it identically for many millions of times over. And so what you do with Tylenol 1, you can do with Tylenol 5, you can do with Tylenol 5000. And sort of that has been the standard. When cell therapies came along, not only stem cell therapies, there's an inherent variation to cells, right? Cell 1 is going to be different from cell 2 and so forth. And so they started subcategorizing these things and at the same time trying to treat them as medicine, as drugs. So there's a special subsection for tissues in the regulatory framework for the FDA. Some tissues, there are some exceptions, and for some rare diseases where you could use stem cells and where you could use a particular set of tissues and so forth. But for the most part, if they are not intact or unmanipulated, then they would not fall under the category, which could be readily used by physicians in the United States. So that's kind of the rate limiting step over here. You couldn't be able to use, for example, umbilical cords because they are in fact manipulated because they're grown, and they're not your own tissue, but they're rather a donated tissue.
Fascinating. I'll continue, Nate, and you jump in when you're ready to help us too, anytime. So I'm really curious about what you do. How do you extract a stem cell? Is this painful? Is this something that I'm gonna, regret doing in the morning after?
This is the great part. So there's two things, as we mentioned in the last episode. First, there's umbilical cord stem cells. there's no extraction needed for those. Those are taken from donations from mothers when they give birth. We take the umbilical cord, we extract the tissue, we select out the cells. By the way, we do all sorts of history checks on the mother, both just regular checks and laboratory checks. We make sure that everything is completely kosher. And then out of that one umbilical cord, you are able to grow those cells several times over, so much so that from one umbilical cord stem cell, you could, or one umbilical cord, you could probably treat anywhere from 100 to 150 people with that, right? And so that's one piece. That one doesn't hurt. It's just either an injection or an IV or something of the sort, and I can define that. The other one is the cells that we extract from you to store and for future use. That's what our bioinsurance effort does. Is again, we take those cells from the bone marrow. It has 3 different types of stem cells. Some are more differentiated than others, but we store them. And if you were to use those cells or extract those cells, for a bone marrow transplant, you would have to go with an injection, take them out, take the bone marrow, and so forth. Luckily,
Is
we
that
don't have to.
painful?
That is painful. I'm not gonna lie, but we don't use that. Luckily, we have some medications. We use a medication called Neupogen that essentially for a short period of time signals your stem cells in the niche in the bone marrow to produce an identical copy of itself and then releases it into the bloodstream. So we prep the patients for a couple of days. Before you come to Costa Rica, you just take the Neupogen a couple of days before. And then when you're in Costa Rica, we have a machine that we use for several treatments. It's called an apheresis machine, where we're able to take the blood out, separate out the umbilical cord the adult stem cells from the bone marrow, and then circle your blood back into you. And we take that fraction of the cells that are stem cells, store them for future use or for future reprogramming, as we discussed. And
Whoa,
it
fascinating.
doesn't hurt. I'm sorry?
Kind of like a dialysis type of machine.
It is kind of like a dialysis machine. Yeah, I'm happy to share some images after, but it's a lot of these things. First of all, everything that we do is essentially outpatient, right? So if you get a stem cell infusion, it's a 45-minute to an hour IV. That's the systemic stem cell infusion. If you're getting your stem cells collected, you sit down in a chair, a nice room with TV, and then you have the blood extracted from you. It's a process that takes anywhere from 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on the patient. We take labs beforehand, and we kind of know a better estimate, just so that we can extract the amount of stem cells that we desire. The third procedure we do is using that same machine as a therapeutic plasma exchange, which I would love to dive in after we talk about stem cells, because it's something that's having a lot of impact in a lot of the fields. And then lastly, again, as I mentioned in the last place, we do musculoskeletal, which is all of the joints and the pains and so forth, skin, sexual wellness, and cognition. And those are outpatient, but for those we do use light sedation. So you're probably going to be out for an hour and 25 minutes while we do the procedure, and a couple of hours after, you're back in your hotel room. We're checking on you so that everything's fine, and that's kind of the scope of what we're doing.
So how do I know if this is right for me? It's obviously elective. Don't imagine it's covered by insurance. So who are the patients? Who's doing this and why? If you can get into that.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of patient testimonials, and you will be able to see them. But I'll tell you in general. It's folks that are trying to get a little bit more out of their life, extending their health span and feeling it. People that have some limitations in the collateral damages of aging that I've spoken to you about. And then there's the high there's another subset of folks that are high throughput individuals like athletes, astronauts, and so forth, that are trying to get an edge on some of their function. And they come to us as well. So the range goes from 30 years to about our oldest patient so far is 86. And again, it depends on your objectives and what you want to do. So the way we do it, to make it simple, you don't just have to listen to me. I mean, I'm happy to talk to anybody again that's interested. But the next step after talking with me would be, I would facilitate a consultation with one of our physicians based on what your needs are, what your goals are, and so forth. And maybe somebody's need is just that they have a nagging knee injury, or that they want to look better on their skin, or they just want to have a set of things that will enhance their prospectus and longevity and health span. So based on that, we channel them to a consultation. And our doctors are trained to do the following. First, if we can't achieve the goals that you're setting forth, we tell you, right? We don't want to bring people. We've told a lot of people, this is not for you. There's certain injuries that are not going to be good for stem cells. There's certain illnesses that it won't work. Naturally, a lot of folks that have certain diseases come to us to see if we can help with it. And for the most part, we have to tell them that this is not a treatment of a disease, but it can help in certain other ways. So we make sure that you get the best possible information so that you can make an accurate decision. Let's say you then decide that you were convinced by talking to the doctors. And by the way, again, if it's something like musculoskeletal, our doctors will see the X-rays. They will see everything. And if at the end of it it's a no, then no harm, no foul, no cost. It's just the way to getting you in the door. Now, if you decide to come in, these treatments are on the expensive side, but we make sure that everything, all of your patient experience is covered. We are mindful, most of our patients come from the United States, that it's a trip to Costa Rica. It's full white glove service. There's a patient experience section to our clinic, and then there's the medical professionals that run it, and the follow-up. We measure you before and we measure you after, just to see that the biomarkers are where you decide where you optimally want to desire. And for the most part, I mean, we get about 2.6 referrals per patient that come in. And that's been our model. Our model is now changing. We're doing a little bit more marketing, but before it was just, when I first spoke to you, Nate, it was just word of mouth.
Yeah.
And getting things going. So now we're primed to go to another level. And again, I will let our team speak for itself, but that's kind of the process, because even though it's elective surgery, we know it's an investment. We know health is the biggest asset that we all have, and we take it very seriously when we interact with each and every one of our patients.
And you've already mentioned a little bit about why Costa Rica, but talk about perhaps how you make sure. I mean, because people have this impression, rightfully or wrongfully, that the American medical system is the gold standard. You can't do better than in America. So if it's not in America, it's not worth doing. And maybe I'm summing up a broad array of perspectives on the American medical system. But explain Costa Rica, why Costa Rica, and how you ensure that there's not a degradation in terms of the quality of the healthcare they're receiving just because it's outside the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of let me say skepticism is good. in all of this, right? One of the things we do when we, if you call me and want to have a conversation about this, one of the first things I'll tell you is I'll give you all of the other clinics that are doing similar things as well, so that you can do your own research and then you can make an informed decision, right? We just want people to move forward. Different countries have different regulations, and some countries have very little. So when you go to some countries, you're at the mercy of how robust the regulatory framework is, and that's one of the advantages of the United States. Our framework is very robust, but it is the downside to it. There's an upside. The downside is that it's limiting in some respects. What we found in Costa Rica is that for the past 50 years, the medical reputation from that country has been stellar. Number one, it has a very good medical tourism infrastructure, and the regulatory frameworks for our evaluative perspective would be, just a notch below that of the FDA if you put that there. And here's what they ask for. Just to give it in broad terms, right? I already described a little bit of what the FDA does and why it's a little bit limiting. In Costa Rica, you have to demonstrate, number one, that it's safe, completely safe for patients, that it's effective, and that there is a reasonable expectation that the claims you are making will pan out. So there is a follow through with the Minister of Health, which is the analogous entity in Costa Rica, where we have to every year they audit us, they see the patients, they figure out what we did was right or not. And if we do the wrong thing, then our permit is taken away. It's that simple. So we feel that we have in absence of a system like this within the United States, Costa Rica has some of the very best doctors that I've seen globally. Again, side story, but important to tell. At one point, Costa Rica, as you're aware, decided they weren't going to invest money in a military. And it's one of the most peaceful countries in the world. But the other upside of that is that they were able to invest in education, and specifically on healthcare. So some of these people that we have on the clinic are not only brilliant, but hyper prepared. And so we felt that this was one of the places that we wanted to target. And again, our founders identified the place, worked for 7 years. I mean, that's a testament to their grit. 7 to almost 8 years to get the permit, because every time the Minister of Health was asking for more or had questions about some of the things, or wanted to speak to other experts, and so on and so forth. And so I can say from the clinic, we have not had one single critical
adverse
adverse effect with our patient. We've had adverse effects. I mean, every time you treat patients, particularly when it's invasive, in the collateral damages part, there are adverse effects. There's the possibility of infection, as with any procedure that is done. But we can say that the biggest adverse effect is something called a stem cell storm, which is a cytokine storm. Typically what happens is that patients feel kind of like the effects of the flu for 24 to 48 hours, and then it goes away. Or if it's localized, they feel kind of that hit and inflammation in the localized session. So all to say again that Costa Rica is very robust. Our patients, our doctors are the top of the line, and that's why we feel comfortable in inviting folks to come over there and experience it for themselves.
And you can pass on this question if you want, but knowing that we'll eventually get you to talk politics, I don't know that you would not. But one of the things that's come to light for me recently is the likelihood or possibility that not only the FDA, but our medical schools are somewhat captured by pharma, and they're taught to dispense medicines basically that are produced by the big pharma industries. So have you felt any pressure from big pharma, and I assume that's at one level why Costa Rica is flying under the radars. They're not in that ecosystem where pharma is trying to shut things down that might otherwise uh, prevent medicines from being relevant.
Yeah, is this a conflict with big pharma?
Absolutely. I think it is a big conflict for a variety of reasons. I mean, I think not only stem cells, I think the whole longevity field is going to have a crash course. I mean, just to give you a number, and this is economics, right? I'm not being a moral judge over here, but if you reduce the pace of aging by 1 year for people, it's $1 trillion loss for
Is that
for
right?
yeah. So and some of the things that we're talking about are going to blow that number out of the water.
20, 30
So
Yeah.
plus years, right?
yeah, I mean it is, and so again, pharmaceuticals serve their purpose, and they have their lane, but this is another way of dealing with some of these things, and part of the effort is to to overcome some of the narratives that, of course, have been perpetrated by people that don't stand to benefit if some of these
Mhm.
efforts grow. I think that the big benefit is that in talking about this and in the United States is that at least our goal and part of our vision is that what we do in Costa Rica and what perhaps other clinics do around the world will create pressure, external pressure, to create change internally, right? And I mean, it is such a big a potential field that I presume that pharma is at one point going to see that it is a profit making venture anyways, and it's going to
And
iron
invest in it.
itself out. Yeah,
Yeah, buy you out.
yeah, it's going to iron itself out. But what can't happen, I don't think it can happen anymore, right? Before, pharma could buy, Carl could have a solution. They buy him out, and then they just shelve it, right? Just because it
Right.
doesn't. But now it's happening everywhere, guys. I mean, this is the big shift that I think it's a literally things that when I mean, I'm not that old, and when I was in college, I was doing part of the Human Genome Project and things that looked like they were from Star Trek. A high school student can do it in his garage today, right? And it's going to get even more accessible and even easier with the convergence of AI and all of these other advents. So I don't see a way to stop it. I just it is just a flood that's coming in a way, and part of our role is exerting our pressure from Costa Rica and from elsewhere that we're doing it, so that people can see that, hey, this is an alternative route. There's a lot of people that are using it. They're showcasing results. It's not only subjective results, but also objective results with the new metrics that we have for aging and other parameters. And eventually, I mean, I think it's just going to be too much for anyone to stop.
Okay, so before we get into the forward-looking time machine, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of your clinic and how this, the experience, what to expect, or the why that you want to address? Um,
I mean, I would just say, look, there's a lot of ways that this can go, and it's very patient dependent. The science that we're using is top notch. We are a research institute at heart, in a lab, and then sort of a clinic to in the face end of it. I would just say that I'll give you guys the my contact information, and of course anybody that wants to have a deeper discussion. Would love to engage with you, because there's so many ways and so many things that are happening. And again, we're getting the patients that we need, right? We don't need to oversell. People
Yeah.
are coming. And if it's not right for you, I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you. And if I don't tell you, our medical team will tell
Yeah.
you. So that's the only thing I would say is I'm happy to engage, whether it's an email or a short convo to guide you further.
Yeah, no, I know when I went away from the event last year in Scottsdale, I came home and I told my wife, I'm like, we are doing this. Like, we got to get to a place where we can do this because you had all sorts of graphs and charts and data. I mean, the listeners are unfortunately only getting I don't want to say a watered down version of it, but they're getting a very cursory level introduction to the presentation that I was privy to. And it is, if I was to endorse it myself, having not even been a patient, it just seems fantastical, like science fiction, like you say. So with that, let's transition to, I want to, if I live 10 more years, what is going to be happening here? Maybe give us a little bit of a forecast, and then we'll end this podcast and we'll get into your sojourn as a politician in our bonus episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we're at the first floor of longevity. It is like the entry level. It's the tip of the iceberg. We're able to measure things. We're able to, these measurements are going to get better, and I'll tell you in a second why. And we're able to extract information from so many things that it's not just like your genome, as we thought when I was in MIT. It's your proteome, it's your biome, it's it's your epigenetic expression. It's all of these different factors that condense together, tell us a picture, and are clear. Now that's a lot of data, guys, right? And no human being can really look at all of that data and make sense of it. Luckily, we're at the cusp of this convergence of artificial intelligence and all of this data that we're gathering from a biological perspective. And these learning models are going to be able to condense that, to take things that are in 30 dimensions and to flatten them out into one dimension, and then give you outputs. Not only that, they're getting better, right? They're learning right now. So I mean, you know, I personally use a product called Biome, which is for the gut, right? It has nothing to do with RMI and so forth. It's just my decision. And the great thing about it is that what they do is they test you. They see how your gut was. Spoiler alert: my gut was not very good when I started doing it, and so they offer you personalized probiotics and supplements and so forth. I take their probiotics. I've seen a meaningful change in it. And then you keep on testing yourselves every year or so forth. And those probiotics change as your biome changes. But not only that, your information changes and gets updated as the artificial intelligence backbone of this learns more and sees more and gets more robust. So even if you only do it once, it'll get better in knowing you. Now extrapolate that towards everything, right? Towards all of the things that we're doing, and I think that is the next step. In our elevator, right? This is the first floor right now. We kind of have all of this information and we're excited about it, and we can take a lot of snapshots, but it's a little hard bringing it together. I think the next level, it's bringing it together in a more cohesive way, that's more streamlined, that's more tested, and that will give us better inferences because it's already gone through the loop in a large population several times over. After that, that's probably in the next, I would say 2 to 3 years, and that's really where life extension starts happening. I see that part. How do we now move the goalpost both in health span and in longevity from 95 to 105? That's going to be in the next, I believe, like 2 or 3 to 5 years from now, right? The next level, the second floor after that, is a very exciting one, which is age reversal, right? That is, and now you can you'll see people. I mean, you'll see folks like Brian Johnson and so forth that have their merit and have done things to reverse their aging. Again, my father reversed in aging, but it's not the common outcome, right? What I'm saying is that I think 5 to 8 years down the road, that will be the more common outcome. Will the age reversal be, enormous or not? Who knows? But that's where it's likely going. And the reason being is, again, see
Sign
this.
me up.
What?
Sign me up. I'm
Yeah,
on
yeah.
board.
But
Hey,
but look, we spoke about the FDA and all these things, and one of the gold standard for us to do anything now is a full clinical trial, right? Full clinical trials are very expensive, they're robust, but they're still population-based model, and it's the best model we have, right? What is it that we do? We randomize patients, we take 1,000 of them or so forth. We put a drug or something into them. We see what happens. And if it's good, we say, hey, it's good. It's demonstrated. So we pass it forward. But all of these, even Tylenol, over the counter and so forth, has a small percentage of the population that if they take it, they'll have really severe side effects from it, right? But the population experiments have been so broad that people feel okay to do it over the counter. Now, here's where I think again we're going Star Trek here, and some of these things might even be more exciting than what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of evidence demonstrating that these large language models are going to be able. The next leap is, instead of language, is to understand biology at a deeper, more systemic level. Right now, where are we right now with this? Well, right now you can use these computers to simulate proteins that would target a disease or something that's not only a rare disease, but something that's only wrong with Nate, right? And you can do that now. But of course, the point we're at right now is that you take the best candidates. Instead of having billions of candidates, you have top 5 candidates. And then you test those out in what we're doing, clinical trials and so forth. Now, the next step on that evolution is not only the protein structure, but what's called the cascades, right? How does that protein simulate when it interacts with a bunch of other things? The next step after that is you have the simulation of a full cell. Bear with me, right? The next step in that is that you'll have the full simulation of a full tissue or an organ. The next step is the full systemic body. So eventually what I'm saying is that with AI, understanding biology as a language, and with that, and being able to take all of your biomarkers and parameters and genetics and so forth, you will be able to create what is now colloquially called a digital twin of yourself. And you will probably be able to get very good results on what it is that specifically works for Carl, for Ricky, for Nathan, that don't work for other people.
right.
In an instant, without spending billions of dollars in clinical trials, and with a high degree of certainty. Of course, at the beginning, it's going to have tons of errors, but this is the path that it's going, which leads me to again this idea of 10 years and beyond. The escape velocity of that after that is who knows, right? Everybody is guesstimating. And my sense, really my experience with science, is that we'll get far. I don't think we'll get to infinity. We'll get far, but Mother Nature always seems to have other traps lying ahead as we age, right? And so we're gonna have to battle those as we age. But at that point, you're if you get to a point where you're pushing the goalpost faster than you're aging, then it's going to be a really exciting time for folks.
So as is, like known to exist. I hear you saying all this, and it's hard for me to comprehend all of it, but we all go through a filter, and one of the filter things that hit me, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this. So I'm asking kind of at a personal level how this could impact me and my family. I have a son with type 1 diabetes. He got it at the age of 19. So his pancreas, it's autoimmune, and there's rheumatoid arthritis. There's all these things that are kind of autoimmune. Is where we're going with this potentially a cure for those types of things? Could we bring his pancreas back to life? Can we cure arthritis?
Let me answer. Let me answer this. The scientific response to that is absolutely yes. The science is proven. The problem is an engineering problem now, Nate, is how do we get there and how do we actually do it, right? And I think, but creating these cells and substituting these cells, we sort of put a little bit of the pieces of the puzzle together in all of this discussion. And when you see, if you're able to engineer and reprogram cells to get younger, you're able to engineer and reprogram cells to work better as well. You're able to engineer and there's another thing we haven't even touched on this, but I'll just mention it. There's this huge technology that I hope our viewers can follow up on. We don't use it, right? And we don't do anything on diabetes, but it's called CRISPR. And think of CRISPR essentially as the cut and paste function on your Word file. It is literally able to go into your cells, take out, delete, or add genes that will change many of the illnesses. Now, to your question, let me take it in two steps here. Some diseases like diabetes and perhaps the most iconic one.
Type 1, because type 2 is kind of a lifestyle one. But
right. But type 1, it's a reception. It's essentially a receptor problem.
Right.
And if you can get cells, a quick and dirty, just to help you visualize it, is if I am able to substitute your stem cells that will create those cells, pancreatic cells, with the receptors that they don't have right now, then you solve the problem. Again, science is there. It is an engineering problem. The question now, it's sort of levels, and I want to, because I don't want to give false hopes, right? The
Right.
first level of illnesses that is likely to be cured using these systems are what's called a one base pair mutation illness, which is essentially, in our code of genetics, there's one site that we know that is wrong and that is causing that problem. So the iconic, again, illness for this is sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a one base pair mutation. With CRISPR, again, scientifically, it can be done now. Engineering that into the body is going to be the next step.
Sorry, go ahead.
No,
like you say, this could be a rabbit hole, but I'll let you finish. Sorry.
Yeah. Just the thought is that in terms of expectation, people can expect those illnesses to come in first. Then the a little bit of the systemic ones that have a couple of things, and then later on things like Alzheimer that have a lot of possible outcomes, or cancers and so forth, right? Those have a lot of triggers. But again, I don't have the bandwidth to understand the extent of how much AI can help us. But I think
Sure.
I can bet it's quite a bit in these elements. And so summing up, I know we went a little bit deep there, but the science is there, Nate. It's just an engineering problem.
I think you've already locked up my brain, Carl. You're going to have to take us out on this one.
I love it. No, I love that idea, and I can think of some personal stories how this would help me and the people who I love most in my family as well. Ricky, give me a place to start, if you could, as a way to kind of wrap up our conversation today. So, maybe we will put all your contact information in for your company as well, and I think we kind of alluded to the fact that not everybody will be able to afford this, but maybe there are some other things that people can do and ways to get started to increase in their own longevity and their health span.
Absolutely. We'll take it back to the first episode. 85% of what you can do right now is lifestyle and mindset. A few little hacks I will provide if that serves. Number one, try to drink 4 liters of water. I don't do it every day. I try to do it every day. I forget. And it is really something that can help you, not only all of your biological processes and aging and energy and cognition, So that's one over there. If you can't get to the 4 liters, which is a lot, at least the rule of thumb is take half of the ounces of whatever you weigh in kilograms in water, right? That's kind of the
Great
rule.
hack.
So that's one. Um, Number two, again, your intermittent fasting. The evidence supports that a lot of these triggers or a lot of these hallmarks of aging get triggered when you reduce caloric intake. I mean, the story, and I did this experiment in my lab. When you reduce calories by 40% to mice, they not only live 40% longer, but they live to be teenagers 40% longer, right? They all of a sudden die systemically, but that's what happens. And similarly, these things have been shown as well, correlation to humans. Now, taking 40% reduction in calories is hard, but intermittent fasting is a great hack that does exactly does a similar thing. Essentially, you can reduce if you can. Ideally, you would stay without eating maybe 16 hours, and then eat whatever you want, or not whatever you want, but you can feast for the remaining 8. But if you can't do that, I mean, and I'm one that can't, I do a 12-hour one, right? And it's pretty easy if you think about it. You go to bed at 8, or you stop eating at 8 or 7:30.
I
You
wish I
go.
was going to bed at 8.
Yeah, no. Hopefully, I would. But you go to bed a couple of hours later, let's say 10 o'clock or so, and then you wake up and you have your first meal or your first calorie at 8. And if you do that continuously, you're what it does to your body is there's a process that your own cells start eating the bad cells around, and,
Autophagy.
and yeah, autophagy, and so it gets incited with that. Exercise, I mean, there's plenty, but walking is if you don't have to do a lot of exercise. If you walk continuously, it does a lot of the battle. Muscle is important. It's been demonstrated that frailty is mostly caused when you're not using your muscle. So at least ideally you go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week, but if not, do some muscle workout at least once every 3 days, and that'll be meaningful as well. Yoga, and I want to tell you this because it's impressive to me still. Yoga has been demonstrated to increase telomere length, which is one of the hallmarks of aging. I don't know how, right? But yoga and breathing exercises, it changes your epigenetic expression pattern, which is the basis for biological aging. It increases mitochondrial production and energy. So a lot of these hallmarks of aging are being triggered with yoga. So if you do yoga, that's great. But maybe Carl can back me on this. If you can't do yoga, at least 10 minutes of breathing exercises on the daily
Makes
to
a
clear
huge
the mind.
difference.
It makes a huge difference. It's kind of like the analogy again. Yoga is the elite level, but if you can't, you do breathing exercises. Similarly to the cold plunge that you were talking about, Nate. Right? If you can do the cold plunge, great. If you can't, stay when you shower, the last 45 seconds to a minute, do a cold shower. You will hate me for the first week to 10 days, but then you'll get used to it. And you will, it's one of those things that you will feel a bump very,
Yeah.
very rapidly. And
I
last,
go full submersion on the cold plunge. But one of the things I want to add to the yoga before you move on to the next, because I think this ties into not only the immediate impact on health, but one of the longevity issues is injury, right? And yoga helps with balance, and balance is where a lot of those late cycle, age injuries occurs when you lose your balance, you fall, you break a hip, you break a leg, and then you're like, that's it. Like there's
Yeah.
Anyway.
yeah,
Yeah, it can start the downward cycle.
It does, and folks get more flexible. You know, they're calm. I mean, it's just the benefits are plentiful. We can have an episode just on yoga and the wonderful things he does. I mean, it's pretty staggering.
Carl will be the guest on that one.
I love
Yeah.
it. The more we do, the better. We'll have to do a demonstration.
And all of this that we've talked about is free, right? The next level that I would say is you know, getting your biomarkers down. I know it's hard, but go getting labs and getting somebody that reads them for you and allows allows you to get to that level where you can understand what you need to do. You can do a lot of these things. A lot of these companies will send you a kit. You'll prick your finger and you can send it back and you'll get some information. Obviously, again, it's a lot of information, so you would like to have some guidance, but you know, some of the things are yelling at you, right? If you want to get nuance, you'll get expert guidance, but some things are like, hey, you know, you have this molecule that's being the problem, and this is how you solve it. So you can get a bit of a sense on that.
Love
So
that.
those you mentioned the mail-in ones. The one I'm familiar with, I think, is Functional Health or something like that. Dr. Mark Hyman's.
Yes.
That's legit stuff.
Yeah, Dr. Mark Hyman, he's gone to the clinic. You can check it out as well. I mean, he's probably one of the most respected sources globally in terms of it. And what they've done is, you know, he tapped into a very important need, which was, you know, for you to get a lab, you have to go to a doctor. And again, the initial response is like, there's nothing wrong with you. We don't have
You
to
don't
do
need
it.
a lab, and then they're not looking at the right things, and then they're reading it based on the critical range as opposed to the optimal range. Kind of what you're saying.
That's right. That's right. So with his effort, I mean, as I understand it, you go, they give you a bunch of labs, they give you an analysis on those labs, and they point you towards the optimization, and then it, you know, they'll give you a guidance again on some of the lifestyle things that you can do to improve that, and perhaps even hormones and that sort of thing. So those things are you know, low hanging fruit. I will caution that some of these. You know, some of these benchmarks are not foolproof, but they give you a zip code of where you're at, and they help you out. Look, in my case, I mean, I told my dad's story, but when I came out of office, and I got reintroduced.
This is teasing our next episode. So
Yeah.
go with
Yeah.
it.
So when I came out of office and I looked at you know, at re-engaging with this, they gave me the assessment. And it's called True Diagnostic. It measures your epigenetic age, which tells you how old you are biologically and how old you are chronologically, right? And you know, I was surrounded by all these guys that were in the clinic, and they were all like, I am 45 years old chronologically, but I'm 35 years old biologically. And they were all like super pumped. And so I thought, I was like, well, I'm probably gonna kill it as well. And when I did it, I was 40 years old chronologically, but I was 47 years old biologically. And this was not only a shot at my ego, right? What it tells me was that I was about, you know, 60 to 75% more likely to hit chronic illness sooner, right? So it was a red flag to tell me, you got to do something, you got to make some changes. And you know, now I can tell you, you know, the story is that I've done it again a couple of years afterwards, and now being 45, chronologically, I am 43 biologically. So it's not as impressive as others, but technically I am younger. You know, I'm younger today than I was when I left office.
Well, that's a 5-year reversal. Well, no, it's even more than that, because you basically,
Yeah, it's a big deal.
if you had kept with it, you would have been 52, and now you're 43. So it's almost like a 9-year reversal.
Yeah, and mine in that case, it's like continuous small steps, as opposed to some folks that just happen to hit the mark and change fairly quickly. Mine was, you know, recognizing I needed to change my diet. I wouldn't sleep a lot. You know, I'll share stories about that. But yeah, you know, lifestyle matters. You know, and it's 80% of the battle, 85% of the battle. If you do a few of these hacks and a bunch of others, you know, you're making a huge investment on your.
Can't wait to hear some of the stories that caused you to age what was that? That's almost 18% of your life in less
Right.
than 4 years. But no, this has been phenomenal. It's everything I thought it would be to have you on our podcast, and I think this is going to easily go to the top of our like best of list
Yeah. It's going to
because
be shared a lot.
it's remarkable. So really appreciate your time with us, and for those who are going to wait for the next episode in 2 weeks, you'll have likely to look forward to hear some very interesting experiences, political insights, probably insights into what we see going on around us right
I
now
love it.
from the former governor of Puerto Rico. So thank you again.
All right. Create a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and the information we shared.
We hope you enjoy the information contained in today's podcast and find it useful.
We hope you will join us again next time as we explore new areas of interest to our listeners or current issues we believe are important to discuss.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you are notified when future episodes are released, and also share it with a friend that you think would benefit.
If you'd like to meet with a member of the Expert Network team or have a request for a special topic you'd like to have us discuss on the podcast, submit those requests to info@expertnetworkteam.com. That's info@expertnetworkteam.com.
Thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. We want to remind you that listening to this podcast does not establish a client-professional relationship with any of the professional firms represented, including guests, nor does it constitute legal, investment, accounting, or other advice of a fiduciary nature. The views expressed are those of the professionals only.
Investment advisor services may be provided through A&I Wealth Management. Securities may be provided through Geneos Wealth Management.